Welcome everyone to another episode of the Silimidon podcast. We have a full house today, should I say, with a pretty big crew of ours. We have with us two very special guests, along with Mehrab Bhai. Is first of all Nazmul Abedeen Fahim sir, a really known and revered character in Bangladesh cricket, and Shaun Williams, the former interim head coach of the Bangladesh national team, currently the talent manager of the South Australian Cricket Association. I welcome you all to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, man.
Yep, it's really early morning in. We're basically talking from three different time zones, so it's really early morning here in the Eastern time zone here in Toronto. Shaun is in Adelaide. I think it's past 10:30 there in the evening, and Fahim sir is joining us from Dhaka. It's just about the evening. We have a lot to discuss today. But we'll try to keep things casual and try to keep things interesting for the crowd. Those of who you are joining us via Facebook and YouTube, do let us know if you have any comments or concerns that you want to ask to our guests today. We'll get started just in a minute. Mehrab, if you have a addressing note for our audience and for our guests today.
I just want to thank both of you, like Fahim sir and Shaun. We worked together for a long time, and especially thanks for giving us your valuable time. I know both of you are really busy, especially Shaun. I know you're past your sleeping time, so thanks for staying awake for me. And Fahim sir, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, mate.
No problem.
Yep. So starting with the questions, I will start with Shaun tonight. I'm saying tonight because it's night where Shaun is joining us from. Yep.
Especially thanks for giving us your valuable time.
And yep, I'll start with Shaun. Shaun, you've worked with the Bangladesh Cricket Board for some time, and during your period, can you basically give us a little bit of an idea what your roles were when you were working with Bangladesh cricket since the beginning?
Yeah, thanks, Manny. It was a while ago now, so I'm trying to just take myself back. It was, I started, I think, around 2004. I think at that time, so how that all came about was basically there was an agreement in place with Cricket Australia to do some game education courses, and so coach education, plus also I think there was some curator courses and those type of things. So I became involved in that through a guy, Ross Turner. For him, you'd remember Ross from back then.
Yeah.
He was working with Cricket Australia at the time. So anyway, I came over for a level 1 or level 2 course and met Dav Watmore, who was the head coach of Bangladesh at the time, and also, I met Mahbub Anam, who was the general secretary. So we got chatting, and anyway, I came over full time, and I think it was more my role at the time was called national manager of game development, but it was quite a broad role. It was, basically trying to get involved and set some structures in place for all of cricket around, pretty much everything outside the national team at that point in time. So it wasn't just sort of one role. As I said, it was, trying to introduce a management structure within BCB, within the staffing. That was a big thing at the time because it was quite new, I think, at that time. For him, you'd probably be able to understand that better because obviously I didn't know the background too much until that time. The other part was trying to develop facilities, helping produce, get grounds up and running and all that type of thing. The other main part, obviously, was the National Academy program, developing, high performance cricket program. Richard McGuinness was there at the time, I think, and he did a fantastic job at it, with the under-19 team especially. Ellie De Winter came over, and for him, you were involved at that time and were fantastic. Mohammed Saladin was also there as a young coach, up-and-coming coach, and he was, obviously, he's turned into a senior coach now and doing a wonderful job. So the role itself, like I said, was quite broad. The other part of that was also to try and ensure that the budgeting process was in place as well. So it wasn't just all about cricket; it was also about the finances as well, and making sure that but the money was being spent in the right areas. So yeah, it was a broad role and one that I absolutely loved and made some lifelong friends out of it. Obviously, Fahim is on this podcast, and we've been in touch ever since, and that's been a terrific friendship over enduring friendship over the years. So that's something that I absolutely cherish. Obviously Mehrab is there as well, and he was a very talented young player coming through who we both enjoyed working with, and he's had a terrific career, and post that as well, he's a bit of a superstar now, he thinks. So that's good. Probably it, I guess, but in a nutshell.
Yep. Thanks so much, Shaun, for doing that lovely introduction, like, of your roles in Bangladesh cricket. Next up, I will go to Fahim sir, and we'll keep the conversation in English for our non-Bengali speaking crowd for a bit, and then we'll move on to Bengali in the later section of this podcast as well. But for now, I'll bring Fahim sir into the fore, and my question to you would basically be: you've been a part of Bangladesh cricket for a pretty long time, and you've seen the current legends of Bangladesh cricket, perhaps from a very young age, players like Shakib, Mushfiqur Rahim, Tamim Iqbal, and you've seen probably from a time when they didn't even know how to hold a bat properly. As a cricketing nation who has been playing Test cricket for 20 odd years now, more than 20 years, actually more than 2 decades, how much have we grown as a cricketing nation? What do you think?
Well, thanks, thanks, Mehdi, and thanks everyone for bringing me in and giving me an opportunity to have a look at Shaun. Shaun had a very brief introduction, but I think Shaun has done a great job for Bangladesh cricket. I'll get to that point now to start with. When Shaun came, it was probably in 2004. We just had 4 years behind us getting our test status. So we're very new then. And the cricket board was obviously more focused on test cricket and forming national teams, and not much thinking about the development process, the rest of the country's cricket. There wasn't much thought about that. So cricket was confined in the cities, mainly in the Dhaka cities and within the national team, and that's all. But Shaun probably the first person to came up and bring it down to grassroots level. But it took time, of course. And what we see today, we have a structure from where we see junior cricket from all over the country are coming through. And that was probably when Shaun came over and built that structure. And he is the one probably who introduced the pathway, what we call today the pathway from grassroots level to the 19s, then beyond 19, the high performance and the A teams. So that was the beginning of it all. And today we have some structure in place, and through that structure we're getting some place. I'm sure a lot to be done yet, but he's probably the person who has introduced a systematic way of producing players. So thanks to Shaun for that. And as far as I myself is concerned, I have nearly worked for 30 years with the cricket board and cricket. And when I started my involvement with cricket, there wasn't really much hope with cricket then. That was probably early 90s. And there wasn't much hope with cricket. Never thought we'd be getting test status or one-day status within 10 years' time. So, but I think there were a few very passionate people who were involved in cricket then, and I was one of them, and thankfully. And of course, cricket was played in a very limited formats and within a very limited section of people. And obviously, football was the main sports, way ahead of cricket then. But gradually, after we did well in the ACC tournament in 1997, and later we got the one-day status and then the test status, things really changed since then. And it's the hard work of a lot of people who has brought cricket to this level. But obviously, in the 20 years, probably we could have done better. Being one of the richest cricket board, we are probably the fourth in terms of earning money. we could have done better in building more infrastructural facilities for the cricketers from all over the country, and probably could provide more opportunities for the younger cricketers, for people who are playing beyond the national team or the senior level cricket. So, but still, I think there are a lot of areas in which we have done good. We have managed to establish ourselves as a good one-day side, and not so good in Test, of course. But that's an achievement on our part, because cricket has become so competitive these days. It's not really easy, and now we're hoping to do well in Test cricket as well as in TT. And I'm sure within the next 2-3 years there will be some changes, provided the board does what it's supposed to do. I'm looking forward to that now.
All right,
Yeah,
all right, thanks.
I think
Yep,
I totally
Mehrab,
agree
go
with
ahead.
Fahim, sir. I know when I started playing cricket, I didn't even know that there was a national team, to be honest. I just started playing cricket for fun because I love the game, and my parents wanted me to do some extracurricular activities. That's the reason why I went into cricket. But then I ended up taking it as a profession. And as Fahim sir mentioned, during that time, I think in the 90s, nobody knew where Bangladesh cricket would be heading to, right? So, like I said, he mentioned that Shaun. I think you did play a huge part, because, as Fahim sir mentioned, that if we didn't have a backbone, right? I mean, that time I didn't know how the cricket board was run, so my job was just to play cricket. I didn't really, much care about what's happening behind the scenes. I just met some fantastic people throughout my career, and yeah, so far it's been great. I know I really had a short career in the international arena, but there was so much to learn from, and especially like I made some friends for lifetime.
Yep, thanks, Mehrab bhai as well. Next up, we'll go to another question for Shaun, and actually, the second part of this question will be asked by Hassan. But just to give a overview of what we're looking for here is, Shaun, both Fahim sir and Mehrab bhai mentioned that you played a big part in the development planning for Bangladesh cricket in the early 2000s during your time, and now you're involved in Australian cricket. Of course, you've also been involved with Indian cricket for a while with Maharashtra Cricket Association. How do you compare the stark, contrasts that rely or that reside in the development planning between these countries? That would be the first half of the question. After that, we'll move on to Hassan's question. But yeah, how do you see the differences? There are definitely differences, but how big are they, and how do you see them?
It's a good question, and it's one that I get asked a lot. Obviously, having spent time, it's 5 or 6 years in India and 5 years in Bangladesh. Also, obviously, 10 plus years in Australia in this system here. So, 25 years all in total. But it's the thing with the Western system or the Australian system that I know is that it's very organised. So that has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages as well. If I look at the amount of cricket that's played in Bangladesh and especially in India, you can pretty much drive around anywhere and you'll see cricket everywhere being played, not necessarily always on a cricket field, but side streets, anywhere. The game just happens. So there's a lot of learning that happens there with kids without coaching, and sometimes that's actually advantageous. The Australian system is very organised, so you'll be a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old, and you'll be in a system or a school or a club where you will play cricket. It'll be organised. It'll be nice fields. The days of backyard cricket, what we called when I was growing up, doesn't happen as much now. It still happens a little bit through the Christmas holiday period, and particularly when the Big Bash is on through the December, January time here, you still see a little bit of it, but nowhere near as much as you would see, just cricket being played in Bangladesh and India. So it's it's quite structured here. There's a lot, as I said, it's really organised. Players will know if they're playing good school cricket, they can go to a club, and then from club cricket, they can get into a state program, state academy program. They get in a state academy program, they play more games, and they go into state second limit teams, and they go to the state team. Then if they do well there, they get picked to play for Australia. So the pathway is it's quite generic, and it's quite, I think most people know what that pathway is. And cricketers will find their own level by that. Whereas in somewhere like Bangladesh or India, there's potentially some extremely talented players that you might never see on the, even in a strong club or even particularly first class cricket or the national team. So there are the differences. Like I said, there's pluses and minuses for both. So the thing with Australia, there is not, obviously it's a population thing as well. So there's not as many cricketers playing. There's also other sports here that are professional. So there's AFL football, which is a big sport here. And you're also, your rugby codes as well are very strong here too. So there's some really good cricketers that come through the system and end up going off and playing AFL. So they're lost to the game as well. So whereas in Bangladesh or India, in my experience, if a kid comes through or a young player comes through and they're good at cricket, they're cricketers, and they're so you don't lose that talent to the game. So yeah, there's some definite differences, that's for sure. So hopefully that explains a little bit.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that point, Shaun. I think I've played the season in Darwin, so yeah. And I know you're the reason. You're the one who sent both of us, me and Rusty. We were the first, I think, first pair. Yeah. So what I felt in Australia, you get, as a cricketer who's starting their career, you get really limited opportunities. I mean, in Bangladesh, there's so much cricket happening. You miss one game, and then tomorrow you play another game, right? But in Australia, you play only on weekends, especially club cricket. So you have to make sure that every opportunity that you get, you perform. Otherwise, you just sit there for a week, do nothing. So that, like you said, there are pluses and minuses for it. So the positive side is that you make sure that you that your opportunity counts. And I think that the negative side is, like you said, sometimes people in club cricket, I know there's no reward, no financial reward. Where in Bangladesh, you play any form of cricket, you get some money out of it. Yeah. So that's also another thing. So in Australia, as you mentioned, the system is structured. Before almost a year ahead that what's the season like. I mean, when you're playing the games. But in Bangladesh, it's all very spontaneous. I remember I was in US, then within 2 days I got a call, Mehrab, you got to come back, there's a game. So I had to fly back from US. So yeah, like I said, there are pros and cons for both of it.
Yeah. May I just add one line? I think whatever cricket you play in Australia, you are within a structure. But in Bangladesh, a handful of players are playing under a structure because most of the games are actually out of structure. You're not really if you talk about TID, the talent identification system, they go out of that system actually. A lot of activity happens in Bangladesh or India, but the structured cricket is played by a handful of cricketers. So that is probably a difference because in Australia, maybe you play less cricket, but that is within a structure. But in Bangladesh, you play more cricket, but mostly out of the structure. So even if you perform well out of structure, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't take you put you in the pathway and bring you at the top or wherever. So probably that's a disadvantage here after having, although we have more matches, but that's a disadvantage that even if you do well, you're not been selected for the next level or so.
Yeah.
Yep. That's actually very, very rightly put by Fahim sir, and thanks Shaun and Mehrab as well for your explanations. We do have a question for Shaun from Hassan. So Hassan, we're on the stream now. Go ahead and ask away.
Thank you, Mehdi, and thank you very much, Fahim sir and Shaun, for joining with us from two different continents. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, and literally, it's an amazing to hear you both and learning a lot. So, my question to Shaun is that you were with Bangladesh Cricket Board for since 2004 to 2008, I believe, and you did a lot of good job in terms of building Bangladesh cricket's. Especially Bangladesh Cricket's Foundation, because at that time Bangladesh was a new team and was got the test status, and they were like in terms of building the structure and everything at that time. As a cricket fan, we used to see that how difficult that could be at that time. So my question to you is, during your time, what was your planning in terms of Bangladesh cricket's development, and what was the time horizon? Was it for like 5 years, 10 years time horizon, or what were the challenges you were facing to execute those plans? And after 12 years since you left, if you look back, do you think that those plans are actually giving results, or there might be some better execution in terms of developing players and building their cricket structure? Thank you.
Thanks, Hassan.
Thanks, Hassan. Yeah, it was. I look back on that time and think, gee, there was so much. It was so busy. There was so much going on, and it was difficult to focus on short term. But in my world, it was always long term. It's this is not going to happen for at least 5-10 years down the road. And I think if you look at some of the things that we produced, and we're, it wasn't the number one thing for me going in was that it was about making sure that whatever was left behind was sustainable, and that was, people trying to upskill people as quickly as possible, trying to give them as much exposure. That was coaching, but also obviously the players were at number one. So there were some really good players come through that time. With obviously Mehrab was there and Saqib Al-Sam was there at that time. For him, obviously spent a lot of time working with Saqib. Mushfiqur Rahim was there. Mamadul Riyad was there. Even someone like Abdul Razak, who was he's been a fine domestic player and played international cricket and did well for a period of time.
Don't forget Tushar, Shaun.
Tushar,
Tushar told me to say hello to Shaun and tell him to mention my name.
One of the great characters. He's a fantastic guy. So I hope he's going well. And domestic champion, obviously, he's done.
He's coming in next week. So yeah.
Excellent. So please pass on my regards to him. He's a very fond memory. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, as always, players anywhere around the world are fantastic to work with, because pretty much every single player that you work with just wants to know how they can improve their game, and at the same time how they can improve their team. So that doesn't change. That's universal. That's around the world. It doesn't matter who you're working with. With top level players, they just want to know how they can get better. And it was a tough time because it was, we were playing serious international cricket with guys that were getting their first exposure to that level of cricket. So it was a very steep learning curve. At the same time, the coaching, I believe then, and I still believe now, that some of the coaching in Bangladesh at that time was absolutely world class, and continues to remain so. So I'm not sure there's enough recognition of the local Bangladesh coaches. That was my experience at the time, and I'm not sure if that's changed too much. Certainly, in my experience, the guys that were working at that time were highly capable, and as I said, world class from my experience around the world. So that was one thing that I was quite passionate about, was coaching and trying to help every single one of those coaches that was on their journey, I guess, to a better career or a longer career in the game. The other part of that was also, you talked about infrastructure, and that's a difficult challenge because it's costly. It takes a lot of maintenance, ongoing maintenance. It takes a lot of knowledge to prepare good wickets. So that was also a major focus at the time. So, I haven't been back to Bangladesh for quite some time, so I'm not sure how that's all going. But certainly it's great to look back and see some of those players that were involved at that time as youngsters, and coming through the under-19 program and the national academy and the national A-team program, and going on to have, very, very successful international careers. That's been great to watch from a distance since I left. So, hopefully that answers a few of your questions. But
Sure.
Yep,
Sure.
yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shaun, I
Yep.
just follow up on one point with Fahim sir. Fahim sir, Shaun mentioned that like when he was in Bangladesh, that the local coaches were not recognized as they should have been. Since he left, you were involved with the Bangladesh Cricket Board, and you were also part of the coaching team for some time. Do you think that culture has changed in the cricket board? Because I know when I left, like still we had coaches from overseas all the time, and it's true that we wouldn't prioritize our local coaches or value our local coaches as much as we do to all the international coaching stuff that we have. So, do you think that thing has changed since you left?
Unfortunately, no. Not only that, during Shaun's time, or even after when he left, there was good enough, good standard coach education programs to develop the coaches. What unfortunately we don't see such programs for the last 6 or 8 years. So two things that has happened. One thing is that there's not much program or motivation for the coaches, for the local coaches, for their own developments. The other things that the recognition part is still the same. So we're still relying on overseas coaches at under 19 level, or even under 19 high performance, obviously in the national team. So that's probably a very sad thing on the part of the local coaches. I think there are a good number of coaches who can look after the age group coaches or HP teams and HP programs. They can run HP programs, because we've been at international level for 20 years now, and we have seen a number of good coaches, people who are working at the highest level, and have gained some experience. So I think there are people who can run the show locally, and once they do it, they get that motivation, and the next generation will look at that and get motivated to come to this profession, and gradually will have a better kind of coaches. I mean, similar to players, there also ought to be a coach's pathway. That has never happened, to be honest. So that part is still missing. The coaches are still working very hard. They're the reason why we're getting good players at the HP or under 19 level, or at the A-team level. So they're yet to get their recognition, sadly.
Yeah,
All right.
also, I think financially, like some of the players that I played with have started coaching, especially Tala Zubair. I don't know if you, Shaun, know, like Tala has become a coach right now. And
Right.
like Nasruddin Farouk, he went into coaching, and they were saying that like the financial difference, the payment basically as a player, what we used to get could never match up with the coaching stuff. And as a coach in Bangladesh, you cannot build a career like, early on. The pay is so low, and that's the huge difference when you have, let's say, in the same team you have an international coach who maybe came from Australia or England, and their pay scale, and let's say if Tala is the assistant coach, his pay scale, there's a huge difference. So I think that's a concern, and I think that should be something that we could work on as a country.
Yep. At this stage, before going to the next question, we actually have to let Hassan head out of the stream. But thanks so much, Hassan, for joining and putting your question out for Shaun here. And we'll see you the next time.
Thank you. And thank you, Fahim sir, again. And thank you, Shaun. Have a wonderful day, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Take care.
Hassan.
Thanks, Hassan. See you, mate.
All right. So the rest of us who are here, we'll keep the conversation going, and I'll go ahead and ask the next question to Fahim sir, actually, and Shaun, if you don't mind, we'll switch to Bengali a little bit. And I'm pretty sure you'll still get it what we're saying, but yeah, for our Bengali listeners and viewers today, my question to Fahim sir will be, স্যার আপনি একটা লম্বা সময় ক্রিকেটারদেরকে নিয়ে কাজ করেছেন, এবং এখানে ক্রিকেটারদের মেন্টাল ফিটনেস এবং ফিজিক্যাল ফিটনেস দুটো নিয়ে হচ্ছে ক্রিকেটারদেরকে খুব একটা অল্প বয়স থেকে আপনার খুব কাছ থেকে দেখা হয়েছে, এবং আপনি হয়তো অনেক ক্রিকেটারকে অনেক তাদের ক্যারিয়ারের একটা কঠিন সময়, ইভেন আর্লি এজ থেকে শুরু করে তারা যখন এক্সপিরিয়েন্স প্লেয়ার হয়েছে তখন আপনি তাদের সাথে কাজ করেছেন। লুকিং এট আওয়ার কারেন্ট টিম, আপনার কি মনে হয় স্যার, কিছু ব্যর্থতার কারণ কি একেবারেই মানসিক, না এটা আমাদের ফিজিক্যাল স্কিলের অভাব, কোন ব্যাপারটা যদি আপনাকে পিন পয়েন্ট করা হয় অথবা একটু প্রায়োরিটি বেশি দিতে বলা হয়, সেক্ষেত্রে আপনি মানসিক দিক না শারীরিক প্রস্তুতিটার দিকে মানে প্রায়োরিটিটা একটু বেশি দিবেন বলে আপনার মনে হয়?
খুব ক্রিটিক্যাল কোয়েশ্চেন। আমার মনে হয় যে আমরা নতুন যেসব খেলোয়াড়দেরকে দেখছি এখন যারা আসছে, সরি শন, meanwhile you can take a cup of coffee while we
No, it's all good. I'm listening, man. It's all good.
okay 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 all right আমরা যদি আমাদের রিসেন্ট পাস্টে গত 5-7 বছরে যেসব ক্রিকেটার উঠে আসছে, আমরা যদি সৌম্য সরকারের কথা বলি, লিটন দাসের কথা বলি, কিংবা শান্ত, এদের কথা বলি, এরা আমার ধারণা এর আগের জেনারেশনের ক্রিকেটের চাইতে বেশি ট্যালেন্টেড, মোর স্কিলফুল। কিন্তু আমার মনে হয় যে মেহরাবরা যখন ক্রিকেট খেলেছে তখনও আমাদের যে ক্রিকেট কালচার ছিল, যে সংস্কৃতিটা ছিল, ওটা স্ট্রং একটা ক্রিকেট কালচারের মধ্যে দিয়ে মেহরাবরা গড়ে উঠেছে। That's what I'm saying, Shaun. The Mehrabs, the group of Mehrabs, they were brought up in a better cricket culture. And that is the difference between today's cricketer and the cricketers of the Mehrab's generation. That's the reason they are mentally strong. They understand the game better than the present lot. আমার মনে হয় এটা সবচেয়ে বড় পার্থক্য তখনকার সংস্কৃতি আর এখনকার সংস্কৃতির মধ্যে। স্বাভাবিকভাবে এখন অনেক সুযোগ সুবিধা বেড়েছে, যে আমাদের জিম আছে, ওরা অনেক সচেতন নিজের শরীর স্বাস্থ্যের ব্যাপারে, এবং প্রচুর টাকা পয়সা আর্ন করা যায় ক্রিকেট খেলে, সো সবার আগ্রহ আছে, তাতে কোনো সন্দেহ নেই। কিন্তু যে সংস্কৃতিটা আমাদের ক্লাব ক্রিকেটে ছিল, আমাদের কম্পিটিশনের মধ্যে ছিল, সেটা কিন্তু অনেকটা হারিয়ে গেছে। যারা এখন আমরা সবাই জড়িত আছি ক্রিকেট খেলার মধ্যে, তার ক্রিকেটে যে ভেতরে যেই এসেন্সটা আছে, সেটা থেকে আমরা কিছুটা দূরে সরে এসেছি। যেই কালচারটা একজন চ্যালেঞ্জিং ক্রিকেটার, একজন চ্যাম্পিয়ন ক্রিকেটার, একজন সেই মানসিকতা ক্রিকেটার তৈরি করে, যে শহরে হাল ছাড়তে চায় না, সেই সাহসী ক্রিকেটার তৈরি করার মতো সাংস্কৃতিক পরিবেশটা কিন্তু এখন আমাদের নেই। আমাদের যেমন ফার্স্ট ক্লাস ক্রিকেটের কথা যদি বলি, সেখানে আমরা জিতলে খুব খুশি হয়ে, হারলে আমাদের মন খারাপ হয় না। আমরা যদি ক্লাব ক্রিকেট, আস্তে আস্তে ক্লাব ক্রিকেটার সেই পর্যায়ে যাচ্ছি। কিন্তু একটা সময় ছিল আমরা হারতে চাইতাম না, যেভাবে জিততে হবে আমার, সেই জন্য আমার সাধনা ছিল সেই ধরনের। তো সেই জায়গাগুলি থেকে আমরা ডোমেস্টিক ক্রিকেটের যে এনভায়রনমেন্টটা, সেইটা আমার মনে হয় দুর্বল হয়ে পড়েছে, যে কারণে মানসিকভাবে আমাদের ক্রিকেটাররা যথেষ্ট সবল না। এটা বোধহয় আমাদের একটা বাকি সব কিন্তু ঠিক আছে। আমরা আমাদের ট্রেনিং প্রোগ্রাম হচ্ছে, আমাদের বিদেশি কোচ আসছে, আমরা ফিটনেসে অনেক কাজ করছি, আমরা স্কিলে অনেক কাজ করছি, কিন্তু মানসিকভাবে যে শক্তিটা দরকার, সেই মানসিক শক্তির জায়গায় কিছুটা হলে আমরা পিছিয়ে আছি।
অলরাইট, থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার ফর এক্সপ্লেনিং দ্যাট সো নাইসলি। আমাদের এটার সাথে একটা সম্পূরক প্রশ্ন আছে। সম্পূরক প্রশ্নটা করবে হচ্ছে জাহিদ। আমরা এখন জাহিদের কাছে চলে যাব সম্পূরক প্রশ্নটার ক্ষেত্রে, যেহেতু আমরা প্রমিসিং প্লেয়ারদের, ইয়াং প্লেয়ারদের বিভিন্ন অ্যাসপেক্ট নিয়ে ইতিমধ্যে আলোচনার একটা অংশ করে ফেলেছি। সো জাহিদ, ফিল ফ্রি টু ইউজ whatever language you want. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mehdi. Glad to see Fahim sir and Shaun. We are really excited to have you with us. So my question will be to Fahim sir. Like, we identify a lot of promising young players at an early age with lots of potentials, but we see very few of them grow into top players who can contribute to the national team. Many of them fade and never fully develop their potential. Is it in BCB's best interest to send some of their talented players to countries like England or Australia during those important developmental years to come as more equipped to play for the national team after they have matured? What will be your opinion on that?
Absolutely. That's what Sri Lanka is doing. That's what India does. That's what Pakistan does, because they send their younger players, promising players in the developed countries to play good cricket and to understand what world cricket is all about. That's very important. And I think one of the reasons our cricketers are fading away is because we are keen to develop players for the national team. So as soon they are getting a chance in the national team, we're happy. But the mistake is that we are not trying to produce international players with international standard. That is one thing. Playing for the national team is one thing, and coping with the international standard is another. So
Agreed.
In our process, we don't bring those challenges which a cricketer will eventually face at the international level. The best cricketer in Bangladesh may not be good enough a best cricketer in Australia or England.
Yes.
No, if you compare with the process, the system of developing the players, the growing years, you see a lot of difference there. So I think there is a big difference between the developed cricket nations and us, where the process doesn't bring those challenges for our players, and as a result of that, a good number of players does fade away because they come without proper preparation or prematurely at the international level, because international cricket is very tough, and we are in the domestic circuit. We are still quite behind in comparison to the international level. So there are very few. There are very few who has made it at the international level. Very handful, as a matter of fact. Even if you look at our national team, I can say that there are 5 or 6 players who can meet up the challenges, international challenges. The rest are playing around them. So we have to look at the development process. Where we need to put more challenges for our players, and that's the job of the cricket board of all of us to raise the standard of the domestic cricket every year, so that the players face more and more challenges, so that helps them to be better cricketers and eventually help them to cope with international cricket.
Yeah, I think just to add to that point, Shaun can pitch in as well. We did have programs where we went to, like I went to Darwin for a season, and I think it happened for 3 years. Then I know Riyadh, Nadif, they used to go to England, and a couple of players even used to go to Brisbane Academy. I think Fahim sir, you also went there with Naeem. So I don't know, for some reason that program stopped. I don't know if after Shaun left everything changed. So I don't know what happened there. But yeah, we did have programs like that where the cricket board would send individuals to different countries.
All right. Yeah, my next question would be to actually to Shaun is and to the flow of it. Shaun, you've worked with many senior cricketers of the current Bangladesh team. You've worked with cricketers in India and of course in Australia, and I think you also probably coached some of them in the A team setup. Now that you're part of the South Australian Cricket Association and you're managing youngsters for them, who do you see, like should we watch out for the next Manas Labuschagne or Cameron White to say that's probably coming up in the horizon? Who do you say that has the potential to probably make it in Australian cricket that you're projecting in a few years? And more in a general sense, when you compare them with Bangladeshi talent, even from your time or in the current time, what's probably one very significant key difference to you between South Asian talent and talent in Australia?
Good question. In terms of players coming through the system in Australia, you would have seen a little bit of Alex Carey in the World Cup white ball format. See Tim Payne at some point is getting closer to the end of his career than the start, so he might move on at some point in the not too distant future. So I'd see Alex Carey probably taking over the reins in the Test match team in terms of wicket keeping. So he's an exceptional talent. He's a South Australian too, so I'm a little bit biased, obviously, but not on that one. Travis Head's the other one who was in the Test team recently and was left out, and he scored a double hundred yesterday actually. So he's in line again, I would have thought, to get his Test spot back. So the differences with players, I think you go back to what Fahim was saying. It concerns me a little bit that the coaching part, the coaching side of it in Bangladesh hasn't necessarily progressed as a career. Because I think if you go back 15 years or whatever, that was the absolute number one goal, or one of the number one, one of the top 5 goals, to make sure that coaching did become a career that people aspired to. And as you said, Mehrab, you said that some of those ex-players have thrown the hat in the ring and wanted to be coaches. They got great experiences as players, and they've obviously seen a lot and experienced a lot themselves. The game needs those guys, and I think that's one of the big differences here, is that coaching is a career. You can make a genuine, lifestyle choice and be a coach, a career coach. There's always, the game revolves around the players, and that's fine. The superstar players always earn big money, and rightfully so. But I think, there's always argument, the coaches should earn more. But in our world, the coaches are pretty well taken care of. It'd be nice to get a little bit more for the coaches, but ultimately there's enough to go around and make sure that those players that well, like Justin Langer's the head coach of the Australian team at the moment. obviously Darren Lehman was as well, and they're great players in their own right, and they're now giving back to the game. There's also, Jason Gillespie's our head coach here, the Redbacks. Jamie Siddons has been head coach here of the Redbacks. So I mean, they're great players, ex-players in their own right, and they're giving back to the game. But at the same time, it's their career. So their knowledge is being passed on. It's being handed down. There's the administration of the game, the coach education. We've got dedicated people that are full-time coach educators. So that to me is critical in the development of players. They also assist with setting up tours and getting various experience for players. As you said, Mehrab, you went to Darwin for a season with Russ. Saqib went to the academy in Australia when I was in Bangladesh. We sent him over there, and that wasn't just him. There was a number of players. We were doing A-team tours. I'm assuming that's still happening. So there was opportunity for local coaches as well.
Yeah, now we hardly have A-team tours, Shaun. Like I remember touring so many. Like we had so many A-team tours.
Yeah. So that to me, that's the critical bedrock. If you've got a strong domestic structure. So in Australia, the first class Sheffield Shield cricket has been so important over a number of years in producing players that are, as Fahim said, not just to play for Australia, but to play successful international cricket. That's what the bedrock of that is Sheffield Shield cricket, the club system coming through that as well, plus all the academies around it. But then the playing opportunities that these guys get. Obviously, Sheffield Shield's a strong competition, but there's 18 tours. So when we were in Bangladesh, it was felt that, okay, maybe the domestic competition is going to take a little while to progress. So how can we fast track guys like yourself, Mehrab? Once you've finished under 19s, there has to be another program that is all year round running. And I remember the tours we went. We went to Zimbabwe. We went to Sri Lanka. We went to England. England was an amazing tour. That was reciprocal. They came. We went there. Those sort of things. In terms of your development, not only as a young man, but as a cricketer, just invaluable. So those things, they just have to happen. If you're expecting guys to just jump straight out of effectively club cricket into international cricket and prosper, it just won't happen. And with that, you need good coaches alongside them, good mentors that have been through it or understand it. There's industry knowledge as much as actually having been a participant in the arena. There's guys that understand what is going on and how to nurture and mentor young men in this instance. In our country, the women is also flying in terms of the game here is going really well. So that's another arm of it altogether. But yeah, I mean, it's to me the methodology of production line of systematic producing of players is actually the theories. And it's not that hard. It's hard to implement. But if one of those steps is missing, and a player doesn't get exposed to a good mentor, exposed to good competition that is commensurate with their ability, and then being able to stretch them to the next level, then they will not develop as well as they need to. So all those steps have got to be in play for a successful player.
All right. Yep. Thanks so much, Shaun, for elaborating on that. We actually have just a couple more questions remaining for the whole show, but again, apologies to Shaun. We'll bring things a little bit back to Bengali. ফাহিম স্যার, আমি পরবর্তী প্রশ্নটা আপনাকে যেটা করতে চাই, আমরা শনের সাথেও অ্যাকচুয়ালি এই লোকাল কোচদের প্রয়োজনীয়তা নিয়ে ইতিমধ্যে কথা অনেকটা বলে ফেলেছি। তারপরেও যদি আরেকটু সংযুক্ত করতে চাই সেই প্রশ্নের সাথে, যে আমাদের এই লোকাল কোচদের উঠে আসার ক্ষেত্রে মূল অন্তরায়গুলো আসলে কি? এখানে কি সাধারণত কোচদেরই একটা সংখ্যার একটা ব্যাপার, সংখ্যার একটা শর্টেজ আছে, না এখানে স্কিলের কোনো ঘাটতি আছে, ইচ্ছার কোনো ঘাটতি আছে, অথবা বিষয়টা পুরোপুরি কর্তৃপক্ষের উপরে বর্তায় যে লোকাল কোচরা কিভাবে উঠে আসতে পারছে বা কিভাবে ফ্লারিশ করতে পারছে? একজন বর্ষিয়ান কোচ হিসেবে আপনার কি মনে হয়?
বর্ষিয়ান না, আমি ঠিক বর্ষিয়ান না, I'll be referring to what Shaun was saying. আমি একটু ইংরেজিতে বলি, কিছু ইংরেজি বাংলা মিলিয়েই বলি যে what we see in Mehrab today is probably a production of for the past 20 years, his cricketing years. Mehrab is a very confident, not so young, but still a young man, and doing his best. And this is a result.
Semi-young, yeah.
This is the result of the culture he had gone through, the path he has gone through. I'm talking about his cricketing life. It's a production of that cricketing life for me. What he's doing today. So সেটাই যদি বলি যে মেহরাব কিন্তু সেই সময়কার যে পরিবেশের সৃষ্টি কিন্তু এখন যে যে আত্মবিশ্বাসী একটা মেহরাবকে আমরা দেখছি, যে মেহরাব একসময় জাতীয় দলে খেলেছে এবং এখন বিদেশে আছে এবং ভালো কাজ করছে এবং ওর কথাবার্তা শুনে বোঝা যায় সেই জিনিসটা কিন্তু এখন আর নেই। সেই জিনিসটা এখন নেই। ওই যে কথাটা বলছিলাম, সেই আত্মবিশ্বাস, সেই সাহস, সেই ডিসিশন মেকিং ক্যাপাসিটি, সেই জিনিসগুলোর অভাব হয়ে গেছে এখনকার কালচারের মধ্যে। সেজন্য আরো মেধা থাকা সত্ত্বেও কিন্তু সেই ধরনের রেজাল্ট আমরা পাচ্ছি না ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল প্লেয়ার থেকে বা দল থেকে। এটা আমি আগের কথাতেই রেফারেন্স বললাম। আর এই প্রশ্নের কথা বলি, আমার মনে হয় সবচেয়ে বড় সমস্যাটা হচ্ছে যে ফিনান্সিয়াল ব্যাপারটা, যেটা মেহরাব কিছুক্ষণ আগে উঠিয়েছে, ফিনান্সিয়াল ব্যাপারটা। একজন কোচ যখন তার কোচিং ক্যারিয়ার শুরু করে তখন তাকে যেই ফিনান্সিয়াল প্যাকেজটার কথা বলা হয় সেটা কখনোই একজন মোটামুটি ভালো খেলা মোটামুটি ভালো অভিজ্ঞতা সম্পন্ন একজন খেলোয়াড় তাতে কখনোই আসবে না। খুব আগ্রহ থাকলে আসতে পারবে না, কিন্তু যেই লাইফে ইউজ টু, তার যে লিভিং স্ট্যান্ডার্ড সেটা বাদ দিয়ে সে এখানে আসতে পারবে না, কিন্তু সেটা সবচেয়ে প্রধান বাধা। সেটাই তারপরের বাধা হচ্ছে যারা আছে তাদেরকে গত 10 বছরে ডেভেলপ করার সুযোগটা কিন্তু দেওয়া হয়নি, এবং তারা যেহেতু জানে তাদের অ্যাকচুয়ালি পদগুলো বন্ধ হয়ে আছে, বিদেশি কোচদের উপরে নির্ভরশীলতা আমাদের এত বেশি যে আমরা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ কোনো জায়গাতে জায়গা পাবো না। সো তাদের নিজেদের ডেভেলপমেন্টের আকাঙ্ক্ষাটাও আগ্রহটা কিন্তু কমে যায়। এবং আমাদের দেশে এখন অনেক একাডেমি আছে, অনেক ক্রিকেট অ্যাক্টিভিটি আছে ঠিকই, কিন্তু সেগুলি যেসব কোচরা পরিচালিত করছে সেখানে হয়তো বেশ কয়েকশো বা 500-700 কোচ ইনভলভ আছে, কিন্তু তাদের ডেভেলপমেন্টের জন্য কিন্তু কিছু হচ্ছে না। তাতে যেটা হচ্ছে যে অনেক সময় লাভের চাইতে ক্ষতিটাও বেশি হয়ে যাচ্ছে কিন্তু। সো এটা একটা খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ প্রশ্ন। এবং শন কিন্তু বলেছে যে সেই সময়টা 2004-05 দিকে যে 4-5টা সবচেয়ে বড় টার্গেট ছিল, তার মধ্যে একটা ছিল কোচদের ডেভেলপমেন্ট করা, এবং সেটার জন্য কিন্তু সেই সময় কিন্তু প্রচুর অর্থ বিনিয়োগ করা হয়েছে। হঠাৎ করে সেটা বন্ধ করে দেওয়াতে যেটা হয়েছে যে নতুন কোচ আগ্রহ নিয়ে যে আসবে, কেউ হয়তো আসছে এবং সেটা শুধু বাধ্য হয়ে আসছে, কিন্তু স্বপ্রণোদিত ভাই আসছে না কিন্তু। সো ভালো কোচদের যদি আমরা পেতে চাই, যেটা তাদের আর্থিক ব্যাপারটাকে নিশ্চয়তা দেওয়াটা খুব জরুরি, এবং তারপর তাদের ডেভেলপমেন্ট। আমি নিজে শন অনেকবারই বলেছে, মেহরাব বলেছে, আমি 3বার ক্রিকেট একাডেমিতে গিয়েছি এবং ওদের সাথে 1 মাস করে থেকেছি। আমার ক্রিকেট কোচ হিসেবে গড়ে ওঠার ক্ষেত্রে সেটার ট্রিমেন্ডাস একটা ভূমিকা ছিল কিন্তু অস্ট্রেলিয়া ক্রিকেট একাডেমি। আমি 3বার গেছি এবং 1 মাস করে ওখানে থেকেছি, ওদের কাজ দেখেছি, সামনে থেকে ছাত্রী থেকে ওদের সাথে কাজ করেছি। সো এই অভিজ্ঞতাগুলো আমাদের খুব প্রয়োজন ছিল, কিন্তু এই জেনারেশন ক্রিকেটাররা সেগুলো কিন্তু পাচ্ছে না। তো ওখানে একটা ইনভেস্টমেন্ট করাটা খুব জরুরি যদি আমরা ক্রিকেটকে বাঁচাতে চাই, আমাদের ক্রিকেট কোচদেরকে কিন্তু বাঁচাতে হবে। সো ওই জায়গাটা দ্যাটস আ ভেরি গুড কোয়েশ্চেন। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Rangan,
Thank you, sir.
I have a
Sure.
question, like a long question for both of you, and like this keeps going on in my mind that I'm going to ask someone whenever I get the chance, and who worked with the management. So as a player, I know when we play the World Cup, and most of the players came through the age group, right? Who are right now playing for Bangladesh. So after under 19, we see, especially in Bangladesh, there's a huge influx of players who get into the national team straight after the World Cup. Whoever performs the national, that's how I came through. And Saqib, Mushfiq, it's the same, right? But if we look at countries like Australia, England, or other countries, we don't see so much of like such a big change. Let's say we won't find, I know David Warner, Steve Smith came through the under 19 process, but it wasn't right then, right after the World Cup. And I feel that when we are at the under 19 level, we are far more better than any other under 19 cricketers around the world, because I think we proved that time and time again. We played against England, we used to beat them during our times. We played against any country we played against during that time, we were basically dominating. But after that under 19 phase, we see there's a lapse. Like either I don't know what happens, if the cricketers they drain off, or it's the skill, or I don't know what's wrong. There's something missing. And same players in other countries, we see David Warner became David Warner, Steve Smith became world class. So after under 19, the players from other countries, they improve massively, whereas in Bangladesh, I see okay, some of the players, they represent Bangladesh cricket, but the rest of them just disappear from, I mean, been not anywhere. I see, you know, most of the players from that team, apart from Sakib, Mushfiq, Tamim, most of us are not even playing cricket. So I don't know. I think it seems to be something is missing, whether it's from the player side or the management side. So if you could just clarify, yeah, is there something you can share?
Shaun.
I forgot to mention Tamim before too, so I better just throw him in as well. So hope he's going well.
Yeah, he's the captain now of the one-day team.
Yeah, I saw. I know that. It's a good question, Mehrab. We struggle all the time here with how soon you throw talented young players to the next level. The thing with here is there's always a safety net, though. You throw someone up into the next level, if they miss, they don't quite nail it the first time, they come back to Sheffield Shield cricket or they come back to Premier cricket, or there's always a pathway back for them. So what I found quite a lot in India when I first started in Maharashtra, there were guys that were being thrown up. Bangladesh is similar, thrown up into the senior team, for example, go around for a tour or whatever and miss out, and then they'd be sort of lost and they wouldn't get another shot at it. So that's the most important thing. It's some players like Sakib and Tamim and Mushi, they're generational players. They went in, pretty much performed to a good standard straight away, and then they've continued on. Others not so well, and that's okay. But there needs to be the recycle where they go back and then they figure out what went not quite right the first time and then go again. So that's one of the things here, that a player, if he misses the first time, it's not the end of it's not him done. It's okay. They go back and they work with their coaches. They go to the cricket academy, for example, or the state cricket have academies. So they have that. They go back into that. They work on their weaknesses or their what they saw, and then they come back and get another opportunity via their performances. And generally they progress, or they go back again, and they have another go, and then so you nearly do 3 times that.
Yeah, I think that doesn't happen as much in Bangladesh, like as far as my experience is concerned. Yeah,
but you've also got to be exposed to a different level of cricket. So you go away. We spent a lot of time with you guys as young players in preparation to the World Cup. So you're actually playing a lot of cricket and being exposed to a lot. You go to the World Cup, you perform reasonably well. You bounce into the national team, and it's a huge step up. And then what happens if you don't quite get what? So I remember the times that I was there. It's like we have to make sure the A-team program and the National Academy program is rock solid, so those guys can go back into that and learn their craft and have another go and because your players get better, they progress at different rates. So it's not just you have to make it straight out of under-19s. You can be 25 years old and still have. Mike Hussey didn't play for Australia until he was 30. 29 years old, and ended up having
I think that's another culture we really have to work on. I think you'll see players leaving cricket at the age of 28, 30. Like I left Bangladesh when I was 32. So whereas at 32 I should be playing, a guy should be dominating the cricketing world. So that's something I think we can really work on, and I think Fahim sir can agree with me. We were even talking before the show that how players, just because we get exposed so early, and once we don't perform as well as everyone expected, some of us just get lost and never get a chance to get back into the team.
I think it's too much to expect a 19 or 20-year-old boy to play at international level. It doesn't happen every day. So I think the challenges at 19 level, the challenges at men's international level, there's a big difference between these two. If you look back at the history of cricket, there are a handful, very few, who has made it. So what has happened in countries like Bangladesh is the selectors always get tempted because there's always shortage of player at the top. So the selectors can get tempted to give chance to a young player, and it's more likely that if you introduce 2, 3, 4 players, maybe one will make it and 3 will not. And the pathway we talk about, the pathway is not actually one way. It's a two-way pathway, actually. Like Shaun has mentioned, it's not only you're promoting a player at the top. If he doesn't make it, there should be that culture or system where it can go back and try again, try fresh. So that's very much missing here, because
That's critical.
yeah,
Sorry to jump in, but that is so critical. And it's not just so if you feel that your domestic level of competition isn't quite producing that next level player, then you have to find another step in between, which is what national A team tours do. Sending a guy or two guys together to go to England and play county cricket, or as we did, Mehrab went to Darwin. Darwin's not the greatest competition in the world. It wasn't about that. It was about developing him as a young man, and Russ as well. And there was
also playing in different conditions, right?
Different conditions, different. You had to take care of yourself. It was like over, I remember you stayed with. Yeah, you stayed with a host family, Roger Weckett, still doing his thing. So that's the. But again, Fahim, sorry to jump in there, but that's exactly what needs to happen. Not every player is going to make it straight through. It doesn't work like a conveyor belt. It works like some go up.
Said hi. Did you see Fisher said hi?
Hello, Tusha. How are you, buddy? Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, so, that it's almost like some guys will take the elevator to the top, some will take the staircase. I'll say that a fair bit, and that's okay. Some go straight up and they go really well and they make it to the penthouse, or they get there and they find it too hard, so they come back down the staircase and then they find their way and they go back again. That's okay. But every single one of those steps has to be putting in place one step after the other, so you can actually work it out. By the time you get back there, you've actually become a better player. Players improve at different rates all the time, as long as you have opportunity to play at a high level, and as long as you have good mentors and coaches alongside them. Then that's the formula.
Yep.
Yeah,
I will go to Zahid once again. Zahid has one question for Shaun, and we're getting closer to the end of the show. So Zahid, if you can fire away with your second question for Shaun, that'd be great.
Okay, so Shaun, what should be the standard for team facilities and programs in a country with 20 years of internationally competitive cricket history? Or what should be the expectation for future performance at the international level, or what sort of infrastructure development and pipelines are in place in countries that are playing test for 20 years? I'm talking about a test nation country. What would be our expectation after they played 20 years test cricket at least?
So facilities, you're talking, Zahid, is that you?
Yeah, it is facilities, infrastructure development wise, all over, what we can expect from a country that are playing test for 20 years.
As I said, facilities are massively important. You need good facilities, but you also need your competition structure to try and mirror as close to what you're going to get at international cricket. E.g., like I said before, if the bedrock of success for Australian cricket has been the domestic first-class system, which is Sheffield Shield cricket. Also, premier clubs underneath that. There's 80-something clubs around Australia, or it might be 90 premier cricket clubs that in the various states and territories have fantastic facilities. They have coaches from first grade all the way down to fourth grade. You've got there's professional coaches at a state association.
Shaun, sorry to interrupt again. I'm really sorry. I know Australia or England, they are playing cricket for 100 of years or more than that, right? But but board like us, like Bangladesh, they are playing for 20 years. What can we expect that we should have right now in our hand, by now? What kind of facilities or infrastructure, or what we are missing from a point of view?
I think he's trying to say, I know, being a first-class player, I'm from Dhaka, so Mirpur is our home ground, right? And still, during the off-season, we struggle to find places to train. We don't have wickets prepared for us. As a first-class team, I think there should be pitches or something prepared so that we can train throughout the year. I remember an incident happened with me. Fahim sir was there as well, where I went to Mirpur to have a net session to practice, and they made a rule in the indoor stadium like Mirpur that only the contracted players, 30 contracted players, are allowed to train. So
That's sad.
I was almost getting kicked out when Fahim sir saved me, like, because I wanted to train, right? Being a first class player, I didn't have any place to train, like, because Mirpur is our home ground and we were not allowed to train there. So that was really shocking to me.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that was a big issue. Again, if I go back to when I was in Bangladesh, that was the number one, again, a priority of top 5 is we need to find more facilities for first class teams, but not only that, the club facilities, that's critical. If you don't have somewhere to train and somewhere to play, then it's very difficult to progress your talent. So, indoor centres, I recall at the time there was a big push to try and get some indoor centres around the districts. I'm not sure how that's going, but that was happening at the time. BKSP was a great facility to use. Obviously not available to everybody, but that's the sort of thing that, when I look at the Western world, Australia, for example, England, the same. Those facilities are available. I mean, even where I'm living now, just up the road here, there's a huge facility: football, cricket, tennis, under lights, all those sort of things. And then that's just a community ground that anybody can use. That's not, it costs free to get in. You can walk in there and do whatever you like. And so those sort of things I mean, we're fortunate to have those type of facilities. But if you're talking, Zahid, about what you should expect 20 years into, I think that's a reasonable expectation that the game needs to progress to that stage where a first class cricketer has somewhere to train and play and, prepare themselves to play at an international level. Surely that's something that is an absolute necessity.
Yeah, Fahim sir, you can if you want, you can add into that.
I think that's one of the saddest part, actually, what Mehrab has said. And I have seen a lot of players first class and players who has just left, got out of the national teams. They have faced problem about their own practice sessions. And I think it's one of the biggest failure. You have to follow certain processes if you want to succeed at international level. And facilities are important. I mean, the good thing about the players, they're ready to sacrifice their time, their pocket money to train themselves because the cricket board or other associations, they're not providing them with coaches or trainers or things like that. The players are sacrificing their time and their money to train themselves. And they're players who are really so keen to develop themselves, which is probably the responsibility of the organizations, but they take it as their own responsibility and try to develop themselves. Eventually it comes for the good of the country, but they don't have a place where they can train and get themselves better as cricketers. It's very unfortunate. And like Shaun has said, my expectation was this: by now, at least all of the first class teams would have their own training facilities in the whole country. Now we have one pipeline and one pathway, that is the national team, A team, and this and that. By now, my expectation was that every region would have their own first class team, their HP team, their under 19 team, and this pathway would have been for every region. So we would have, perhaps instead of one Mirpur home of cricket, would have 8 first class regions with all these facilities and separate 8 pathways. Probably they have made Bangladesh would have taken Bangladesh cricket to a different level. But unfortunately, that has happened yet. That's very unfortunate. And I'm sorry, Mehrab, that you had to face this. You had to face this after playing for the national team. That's really very sad.
Yeah.
I will go to the last question of the program today, basically, and I want to ask both of Shaun and Fahim sir about this. Is that we see in terms of business language, probably that or in project management, that we try to follow certain models whenever there is a problem, and we find solutions based off each of those models. But where Bangladesh cricket is right now, even after playing 20 odd years of Test cricket, which I think currently the condition of the Test team is really, really poor, the current setup, because after playing almost for 1.5 years in the ICC World Test Championship, we basically have 0 points, and there is a big possibility we'll end up with 0 points even after the cycle is completed. So is there a lack of organization how we are trying to solve this problem as a nation or as a cricket board, that we don't have a specific model, we just try to improvise when there is a problem and try to find an improvised solution to that problem rather than addressing that as part of a system and then addressing it as a holistic process that how to solve this problem. I'll begin with Fahim sir again. What do you think is happening in the background that our problem solving ability in the cricketing fraternity, are we taking things too casually?
No, not quite that. I'm sure everybody wants Bangladesh cricket to do well, even people who are involved at the management level. But unfortunately, they're not aware of the finer things of the whole process, of the whole system. And there's small things. The small things put together, they can come out as a big solutions for whatever problem we have. Shaun has mentioned about the challenges at international level. So the ultimate objective of the authority is to minimize the difference between the local and international cricket. Now the question is, how do you minimize that? So you create opportunities for players. You create good competitions. You come up with good coaching staffs, good umpiring, good grounds, good training facilities. So good players, good management, good facilities, and good competitions. These four can create good players.
Wow, amazing.
This is all you need, actually. These are the four main pillars. Around these, there are other administrative issues, but these are the four main pillars. If you make it happen, there's a good chance you'll succeed at your top level, domestic top level, and the difference between the domestic and international will gradually decrease. That's the challenge for the administration. Now, if we can do that, I'm sure we'll do well in the coming years, and that's what somewhat is missing at the moment, unfortunately. But I think that's where we need to head.
Yep, Shaun, you want to add anything to that in terms of finding solutions for the right problems?
Yeah, I think that what Fahim said then is exactly right. I mean, it's funny, while you were talking, I just dived into my my many files that I have saved, and I've found one that strategic priorities for Bangladesh cricket. So, this was 2004 to 2008, which is the time I was there, right? So, you actually need to map out, it's a bit of a business plan, and you just have to say, which is exactly what Fahim said, excellent facilities that will attract participants in all parts of Bangladesh, develop high-performance cricket based upon a system of continuous improvement, including a strong and viable club system, build participation, players, coaches, umpires, curators, administrators, through development of a fully integrated school and club cricket system, and ensure that cricket has a strong and sustainable financial base. And then you go through the whole, like these 30 pages of stuff. Now, it's okay to just say, oh, that's just a document, but ultimately that's your roadmap. So you continually refer back to that. But what Fahim said then is, if you've got good competitions, you've got good coaches around that, and you've got good facilities, you'll end up with good players. That, particularly with the amount of interest and love of the game in Bangladesh, I mean, it's great. I mean, we're fortunate. The game is fortunate that it's so well followed and so popular in places like Bangladesh and India, because, as I said here, sometimes in the Australian system we lose some players to other sports because there's a career there too. So anyway, the formula is not that difficult. It's hard to implement, but what we're trying to achieve is exactly that: good facilities, good coaching, good competition, financial stability. There's your pillars, as Fahim said. So I agree totally with that.
Yeah, maybe before you end the show, I just want to ask Shaun.
Sure.
Shaun, would you ever come back to Bangladesh if you were given an offer?
100%.
Oh, glad to know that.
That's lovely to hear. That's lovely to hear.
Shaun has great love for Bangladesh. I know that, and he has spent 7-8 years here, and he's done his job with so much passion and so much love. And thanks, Shaun, for that, because you have made a lot of friends here, and they are still very good friends of yours.
Yes, we are, Shaun.
Yep. and when Mehrab Bhai and Fahim sir is talking, they're obviously also talking from their professional capacities because they've worked closely with Shaun. But even as fans, we also think the same, that we thank you for what you have done for Bangladesh cricket. We hope that we wish that things turned out better than what they did in the last 12 years, but probably better years are to come if there is better planning in the future. And on that note, actually, we've talked for about an hour and 10 minutes, which has been absolutely lovely, very informative, and the viewers that joined with us, I thank them too for being with us for so long and listening to the whole conversation. I thank Mehrab Bhai again and Zahid as well for joining us today. And last but definitely not the least, Shaun and Fahim sir, it's been an honor to have you here on our show and talk so much in depth about coaching cultures, training methodologies, and everything regarding Bangladesh cricket that can improve. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we do hope that this is definitely not your last episode on the Silimidon podcast. We will get to see you sometime again. Shaun doesn't seem very optimistic about that because I would think we've taken a large chunk of his sleep tonight. But we do hope to see you again. And take care, everyone. What I say to our viewers every time before we leave, that regardless of what vaccination program your region is going through, please do wear a mask when you head out, and maintain social distancing for the safety of you and your family, so that everyone can get back to the normal as soon as possible. Once again, thank you everyone for joining with me tonight or this morning, wherever you are, and we'll see you the next time. Take care and have a good day.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Mehdi. Thanks, Shaun.
Thanks. Great to see you.
Thanks, Mehrab. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Thanks, Shaun.
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
well. Yeah.